Today on Sugar Spun Run, we'll be making an ice cream cake. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Today we are making a completely from-scratch ice cream cake with rich, fudgy, chocolatey cake layers and my super simple no-churn ice cream. Let's go ahead and get started by preheating our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, in a large mixing bowl, we are going to combine 1 1/4 cups of granulated sugar, 1 cup plus 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of natural unsweetened cocoa powder, a tablespoon of cornstarch, a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, and 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. We'll whisk everything together so it's nicely combined. And next we're going to add 1/3 cup of a cooking oil. I'm using canola oil, but vegetable oil or any other neutral cooking oil would be fine. We'll also add 1 large egg and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. Now I'm just going to be mixing everything together by hand, and my goal here is to get all of the flour and cocoa powder mixture moistened by the oil. It's going to be pretty dry and crumbly, and this will be a little bit easier if you want to use a stand mixer or an electric hand mixer instead. So you can see this is pretty dry, but once I have all of the flour mixture moistened, I'm going to add in 1/2 cup of whole milk, and now I'm going to stir everything together until I have a nice, smooth, uniform batter. All right, our final ingredient for the cake layers is 3/4 cup of hot coffee. Now this should be really hot. If you don't have hot coffee, you can use hot water instead. It's fine, but the liquid needs to be hot. Now we are going to pour this in and stir until we have, again, a nice uniform batter. It is a very thin batter. That's totally normal. It's supposed to be this way. All right, now I'm making an 8-inch ice cream cake, so we are going to pour this into 2 8-inch cake pans. I have greased these with baking spray, and as you can see, I've lined the bottoms of the pan with a little bit of parchment paper just to make sure they don't stick. Now let's evenly divide the batter. And we'll take these over to our preheated oven where they're going to need to bake in the center rack for about 28 to 30 minutes. The best way to check that they are done is to do the toothpick test, where a toothpick inserted in the center should come out clean or with a few moist, fudgy crumbs. These cakes are looking pretty good, so I'm going to let them cool for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I am going to run a knife around the edge just in case there was any sticking. Doesn't seem like there was this time. And I'm going to carefully invert them onto their cooling racks, and I'm going to let them cool completely before I go any further with this recipe. Now once the cakes have cooled completely, they usually have a little bit of a dome on them, so I like to just quickly level them off. This is optional. The ice cream cake's pretty forgiving, but it just makes for a slightly neater cake. Now you can see I've placed the cake on plastic wrap. That's because I'm going to wrap up the cake, and now I'm going to place these in the freezer while I prepare the other parts of the cake. When you assemble the cake, it's just a little bit easier to work with it when it's cold rather than at room temperature. It's a little less likely that the cakes will break, so just pop them in the freezer. Now while the cake is cooling, we can prepare our simple homemade ice cream. This is a no-churn ice cream, super easy. Let's go ahead and get started. Now in a mixing bowl, we are going to combine 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. This is a 14-ounce can. I want to make sure I get everything out of there. We're going to combine that with 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And I just like to add a pinch of fine sea salt. This is about 1/16 teaspoon. Now if you don't want to use your own homemade ice cream, I will include notes in the recipe description so you can use store-bought instead. But this is really easy and it's really good. All right, now we'll stir these ingredients together till they're nicely combined. I want to get all of that vanilla nicely mixed in there and set this aside. Now in a separate mixing bowl, we are going to whip our heavy cream, which gives our ice cream the nice ice cream-esque proper consistency. You're going to need 2 cups of heavy cream, and this should be very cold. Now you are going to want to grab yourself an electric hand mixer, or you can use a stand mixer. And we are just going to slowly increase our speed. We're going to whip the cream until we have stiff peaks. I'll show you what that looks like when we get there. If you're someone who ever has trouble getting your cream to whip properly to stiff peaks, you'll probably want to use a metal bowl that you've chilled in the freezer. I don't usually have a problem, so I'm not today, but that's a little trick that could help you if you ever struggle with that. Basically, you're looking for a Cool Whip-like consistency. It should be thick and fluffy. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let me grab my spatula. show you how that looks. Thick, fluffy, it's holding its shape just fine. This is perfect. All right, now grab your condensed milk mixture and we'll add that in with the cream. And we are just going to fold everything together. I do recommend doing this part by hand until the ingredients are completely combined. And this is our ice cream base, but because I love sprinkles, I'm also going to add a 1/3 cup of colored sprinkles to the batter instead. I am using, as you can see, traditional sprinkles, sometimes called jimmies. I would be hesitant to use nonpareils because they'll probably bleed in the ice cream. All right, so possibly the trickiest part of the whole ice cream cake process is the assembly. So I'm going to show you how I do that. I highly recommend using a cake collar. I will leave a link to this in the equipment section of the recipe, but if you don't want to buy this or you don't have any on hand, I will also include a section in the notes on how to assemble this cake without a cake collar. Now what I do is, this is a little taller than I need, so I always cut off the top part, the collar. It's going to make it easier for me to drop that top layer in there, as you'll see in a bit. After I place my first cake layer on the serving platter, now I will wrap the cake collar around the cake. And you do want to make sure there's some overlap. I don't know, some cake decorators that are more professional than I may have a better way to do this, but I just use a couple pieces of tape to fasten the cake collar to itself. You do want to make sure this is nice and tight because that ice cream is going to go anywhere that it's not stopped by the cake collar. So now we have a nice little collar here, and you can see it would kind of be a pain if it was taller than this. Now let's grab our ice cream and we are going to pour this right in here, right on top. And it'll sort of even out when you add that top layer of cake, but I do like to smooth it just a little bit with a spatula. All right, now grab your second layer, and again, it's much easier to handle if it's a little bit cold rather than room temperature. And we'll go ahead and we will gently place this on top. Kind of level it out a bit. And don't panic if it looks like the ice cream is a massive layer. It's going to squish up the sides just a little bit. It'll look thicker than it actually is. That's not a problem. All right, now the ice cream layer needs to freeze completely before you can decorate this cake, and certainly before you can cut into it. So we're going to pop this back in the freezer for, I'd say, at least 6 hours. And because we don't want the cake to absorb any of the odors, we're going to just cover the top with a piece of plastic wrap. The collar is gonna do a great job of protecting the sides. If you can let yours freeze overnight, that's even better. That's usually what I do. Fortunately, I have a cake I prepared yesterday in preparation for today's video, so I'll go ahead and grab that. All right, so here is my frozen cake. So now we're just going to go ahead and decorate it. Of course, you'll want to remove your cake collar. Now for ice cream cakes, I really think the best frosting you can use is my stabilized whipped cream, and I will make sure to leave a link to that in the recipe. This is a single batch of my stabilized whipped cream, and then I have a little bit of frosting. This is also stabilized whipped cream. It's just colored blue with my AmeriColor Sky Blue, just because I thought that color looked nice. And we'll want to move pretty quickly here, and we'll just decorate this cake with a generous layer of frosting. I have this cute little cake decorator that I like to use on the sides for my ice cream cake. If you just set it on a turntable, it gives you a nice, neat edge. I can link to this as well. A lot of links today. That wasn't intentional. We'll top everything off with a nice decorative border on top. I'm using my Attico 848 tip. And of course, a few more sprinkles. All right, now you can pop this cake back in the freezer if you need to until you're ready to enjoy, but I'm ready to cut in right now. So let's go ahead and take a look. Look at that. And that is how you make my favorite completely homemade ice cream cake. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one out, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. You're gonna want to try this one.